Shall we now look at the geography of the village to compare it as it was when you were young to what it is today? If I was to stand, for instance, on where the roundabout is now, I would find that the Abergavenny dual carriageway road wasn't there. The dual carriageway road to Monmouth hadn't been built, and neither had the bypass down to Usk, Gwelloch and Usk, which runs in front of Sunnyvale. So if we came from there into the village, what are the first buildings we would come to?
Well, on the right would be the Jeffreys Hall, and then there was a little cottage belonged to the Crown, and then the Crown. That was all.
What about the other side of the road?
Now, on the left-hand side coming down, there was a wooden bungalow, and then there were some old buildings. It used to be a malt house that they pulled down when they built Orchard Lee, Westleigh. And then there'd be Orchard Lee, and then another 3 or 4 old cottages running up to the garage.
And on the left, where Fairfax View is, and Beaufort Gardens and Sumter Drive, these presumably were open fields.
Yes, they were. And there were 2 fields and an orchard, and there was a footpath, a near cut crossing the old road at Primrose Green, direct up to the castle.
I've been told that some of the current residents of Beaufort Gardens, when they dug their gardens originally, found a lot of horseshoes and things. Presumably there were stables and things, outbuildings from the Beaufort Arms Hotel.
No. When the garage was built by Mr. Jones, they had a blacksmith and wheelwright shop on the end of the garage. So that's where the horseshoes came from. They used to shoe horses there, and wheelwright and carpenting.
Well, it just shows that you must never presume something.
No, that's quite true. So
thought...
that's where the horseshoes came from.
Oh, yeah. Right, we've already dealt with the main street. If we go along to Castle Street and proceed there, apart from Barton Bridge Close, which is a quite recent development, presumably there's very little difference in Castle Road and Castle Hill.
It's just the same now as it was years ago. It's just that the house has been built in Barton's Close, and a few houses on the top end of the road.
Right, let's go down to Chepstow Road. I would imagine that the last of the old houses on the right would be somewhere where Mrs. Jenkins lives.
Yes, there was one house below that, on the end of the 3 new houses, which the Baptist minister lived. It was called the Manse in those days, Dean House. No?
That's on the corner where the existing entrance is to the estate.
That's right, yes. It's where the entrance to the estate is now, and the house comes right on to the corner.
Below that there were just fields.
Yes, fields and the Brooks Farm, and all meadows and that down there.
On the other side of the road, there was the church and the school. We call it now the old school, but
the
in
old
those
church
days
school.
it was the only school, so it was the school.
Yes, the school in those days.
Was there anything after that, below that?
Nothing at all. There was not anything at all. That was just from the school on. It was all meadows all the way down. Well, there's perhaps a mile down the Chepstow Road before you came to a cottage.
And where the estate is now, the Fair Oaks and Willows and Clydesdale, those were all fields.
Yes, those were all fields there.
now you can go from Chepstow Road through the estate into Usk Road.
Yes.
Let's go over to there and consider the Usk Road from the Crown down towards Usk.
Yes.
What buildings were there, and where did they end?
Well, on the end of the entrance going into Sunnyvale, there were three cottages. There was where the butcher shop is now. That used to be an inn, the King's Head. Then was the chapel house. Then there was the Mr. Amsh's.
This was the Chestnut Garage, was
The
it not?
Chestnut Garage, ironmongers and garage. And there was 3 old houses then on the end of that. They were pulled down to build Wilker Terrace. Round about 1937. Those were the first houses, council houses, built in Raglan. And then there was on the end of the Wilker Terrace, there was an old building called the Billiard Hall. I don't remember it as a billiard hall. It was always a storage place for Willsbrook.
That's right, you mentioned this earlier.
Yes.
Where the prisoners of war were billeted during the First World War.
During the First World War, it housed
Right.
German prisoners who worked on the local farms.
So that, in effect, as far as that side of the road was concerned, was the end of the village.
Yes, that was the end of the village there.
Now, on the other side of the road, which was the last building there?
Well, the last building was Willsbrook. There was nothing afterwards. There was nothing at all until you got down to over the Wilker Bridge on Jimmy Jersey's Wilker Cottage. So that hadn't altered at all. Father Sunny, the new houses there, the avenue and the crescent and leading down to the willows and down there.
So that was all fields. And
That was all fields there.
Could you walk from Usk Road over to Chepstow Road?
Oh yes, there was a footpath down there, and it follows the road, the new road now, near enough in the same place, and you could walk there, and you could come out and walk across, and you get across the road, over a stile, and onto the station road. And for people catching the train coming from the direction of Usk Road, it was a very near cut and coming all around through the village.
Oh yes, of course. And I suppose that was why the footpaths are so important.
Oh, they were very important in those days.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of footpaths in Raglan, leading to different places, and it's surprising the distance they saved people in walking, because they had to walk in those days. There was no kind of transport, and there was no cars, and very few people owned bikes, so it was it was walking.
Yes, and if you could save a half a mile, it was well worth it.
Oh, it was worth it.
Particularly if the weather was bad.
Yes, yes.
One road we've missed is the Monmouth Road.
Yeah.
Now, if you went from the church there up to Monmouth, what would the last house in the village there be?
Well, the one on the end of the old Monmouth Road where Miss Challenger used to live. That was the last one there. There were a couple of old cottages up above.
On the junction?
Yes,
the junction
right on
with
the
old-
junction. That would be, yes.
So all the others are relatively new. What about the Liga on the other side?
Yes, the Liga, the Liga was built just before the Second World War.
Was it?
Yes.
Well, I would have thought it was older than that.
No.
And then where we now go over the dual carriageway to the continuation of the old...
Yes. Mhm.
Were there any houses up there?
Yes, Mr. Amshire built a row of houses there. I forget the date of those. Those would be in the early 30s, I should say that those would be. And then you come up to Cuckoo's Row.
Yes.
And then that was the end.
At the end of Raglan.
Yes. You go on for very near a mile, and you come to the parting of the parishes, as we used to call them.
Oh yes, where was that exactly?
At Pontyryddon Bridge. There's a little bridge. The services on the right, and just before you get to the services, well, the services to run right to the bridge near up there ground does. There's a little bridge there, a culvert crossing the road, and that divides the parishes.
Ah, that would be Raglan and Dingerstone, probably.
Pennycloud.
Pennycloud?
Yes.
Going back to when you were young, and thinking of life as it was then, compared with what it is today, do you think it was better in those days than it is now?
Well, I don't know whether it was better. We get more conveniences today. But we were quite happy. We didn't have these things and we didn't miss them.
These are things like electricity and central heating, transport and television, holidays abroad, some of the ordinary things of life today. You didn't have any of these, so you didn't miss them.
We didn't miss them, man. No.
And what about your relationships with each other in the village? Because it was quite small in those days.
Oh, it was quite small in those. Everybody knew everyone, and we were quite happy, help one another.
There weren't many millionaires around, but...
No, not many. There were very few poor people. Everybody lived at a decent standard of living.
So by and large, you were quite happy. You enjoyed your early life.
Oh, yes.
Despite not having all these modern devices, your life was happy, and the village life was happy. So you haven't got any complaints about that?
No complaints whatever. We used to make our own entertainment. We had quite happy times. We used to have sports. We had the football team, the cricket team. And we had concert parties, and we used to have concerts and whist drives at the Jeffress Hall.
So there was plenty going after
there
you
was
finished
something,
your work.
Yeah, in the winter, of course, there was.
And of course you didn't have a lot of the things, not the advantages or what we call the advantages of today, but the disadvantages, the things you read about in the newspapers today, muggings and robberies with violence and all kinds of things.
We didn't get any of that. We didn't, well, I don't think we ever heard of a break-in in Raglan. There's no muggings and that sort of thing. We were very lucky here now, because we were very lucky with crime and that, haven't we?